Hey everybody, welcome to Today New Brunswick, Tomorrow the World. With you as always, we have Dan Hayward with you here, and myself, Matt Stranick, in Kamloops now, but not long for Kamloops. I got to say.
Ooh.
Yeah. Just I won't assume that whoever catches this, follows any of my social media stuff, but I will say that. I got a bit of news in my world is that after something like a year and a half, since February of 2022, I finally have a job lined up. So that's pretty good stuff for me. But it's a little bit. I'm moving from one side of this country to the other. It's in St. John, New Brunswick, of all places, and actually. There used to be a coffee table right in this sort of vacant area here behind me, and that's sitting downstairs on my front doorstep, waiting on somebody from Facebook to pick it up. So, yeah. So I appreciate the. Today's topic didn't require a ton of prep, Dan. Why don't you? Which I appreciate. So why don't you just tell us a little bit more about it here, pal?
Well, I figured it's been like just an eventful couple weeks all around the past little while. Like, various, it's cool, very cool, but various personal developments on your end. I know earlier on before we recorded, Nova Scotia was partially on fire for a bit, and that was a little wacky on my end. I think it's pretty much out. Even actually. So I know I've mentioned PEI hardcore band Cell Death a couple of times on the show, and their guitarist was actually one of the firefighters down in the Yarmouth area, like fighting like the really big fire. So he's all around cool for like a few reasons.
So when I was seeing those really smoky, hazy pictures of New York City, and they were blaming Canada for that, which I mean. If that's what it was, that would have been from like Ontario fires, or
that was Ontario fires. We kind of had that going for a little while. The week previous. There was also one of the fires in the Halifax area. There was like I think an ammonia leak or something like that. Like one of the ones like close to the city. So it was just like keep your windows closed kind of day.
Yeah. Really? Wow.
But then I mean we lucked out and got like a bunch of rain that actually just ended recently. Like today's probably one of the first like sunny days I could think of since everything was a little crispy. But it's okay. It's for the time being, it's fine, and that's the main thing.
Right.
But yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, a lot of respects. My goodness.
But anyways, so yeah, just to get back to the topic, I just figured let's just talk about some things we're listening to recently. It's been a little while since we've done that kind of check-in. Just like doesn't have to be any big sort of topic, just like a big sort of theme, just like some stuff you're digging these days. And
fair enough. No, man, that's awesome. I appreciate that. And again, next time we do this, there'll even be less stuff in the background. And then, beyond that, I'm scheduled to start this new job in middle of July. So
wow,
yeah, like it's coming up soon. And my kids are here with me, but they're going to be kind of going away with their mom for about a month. And then this place is really going to be just stripped down to I realized. So this is part of my thing today is like I sort of thought maybe I'll ship the records, like this kind of ginormous record collection. But the more I'm thinking about it now, I've got two things have occurred to me. Is that first of all, I probably have enough records, like almost 1,000, with some of them being old, some of them being obscure, to actually get the need to get it assessed. So
Yeah, I
like,
suppose.
like just and then find out if it's what it's worth, if I keep it, if I should be carrying insurance on it,
Yeah.
as a kind of asset. But then the
Mhm.
other part of it's just like, I wonder
Huh.
if my friendly local neighborhood record shop would just arrange to take it off my hands for me, and thus facilitate shifting back to New Brunswick a little bit more, so I don't
Yeah.
have to pay to have this thing brought across the country. So
That's fair. That's definitely fair.
major vinyl decisions. But
Yeah.
yeah, but anyway, so I'm just gonna jump right in with mine. The first one is
Ah.
I got this. This is like one of my last buy myself a record every time I get an interview purchases from
Yep.
Discogs, and this 50 Canadian punk and hardcore bands. And I'd never heard of this particular comp. Came out in it says fall of '98, so 90s hardcore,
Mhm.
and 52 there's 52 tracks on here altogether, spread out over 2 records, on something called it came out from Kingston, Ontario.
Yeah. Is it Fans of Bad Productions? Is that the name of the label?
Man, how did you
I've
even know that?
because
Okay.
they did a few comps that they were just like, I don't think the guy ever put out anything else but these like 50, 60 band compilations every couple of
Okay.
years, like through the 90s. And
Okay.
I mostly knew them because like he had a lot of West Coast bands on the compilations, and some of my friends when I lived on the West Coast like ended up on those comps, so they'd just be copies laying around. But yeah, when I saw you bought that, I was like, I know I've heard that record, and I know it brings back fond memories. I can't remember a damn thing that's on it, but
Well,
it's
for
just
me,
like
I mean,
one
for
of
me,
those
this
like,
is
just like like sense memory situations. Like,
well, totally, man. And for me, like, there's a bunch of stuff on here that I've kind of heard of, but not necessarily listened to, and a couple of
mhm.
things that I just like, Union of Uranus is on here, and
Yeah.
I got one of their records just off of our last one of our last episodes. But I
Mhm.
mean, just each time I look at this, I can just go on to Discogs and find something. Like there's, I was surprised that like Propagandy is on here. They're still around.
Yeah.
Grade, the band, which they they actually commented on this today. They saw this
Wow.
picture of them on
Grade
Instagram.
commented on that. They were a
They
big
did.
deal at one point. I remember,
Yeah, that's
like,
right. That's right. They were
yeah,
just like, I've never
like,
heard this one before, which made me sort of think for a moment, is this like, was this put out legitimately at the time? Like, was it just a guy with a bunch of tapes, sitting around, or did he have the proper rights? Like, maybe Grade didn't remember because they didn't give permission. I don't want to
who
like make too much
knows?
of it, but I'm just going to assume. I'm going to assume it's legit.
Yeah,
Um,
it was also 25 years ago.
and it was
So
25 years ago. And then there's just some stuff on here. Ex-Dead Teenager. I think you
yes,
mentioned that before.
that's one of Steve McBean's old bands, from Black Mountain and all of those. Like,
Yeah, I know you
yeah,
mentioned
that totally would have been
before.
the era that they would have been. Yeah,
Swallowing Shit is on here.
yeah.
Render Useless.
Are Jonas on there? I know they would have been on around
Yes,
that time.
they are, as a matter of
Yeah,
fact.
there's actually
Okay.
a really cool reissue, just of their pretty much everything they recorded, which wasn't that much. That was the pre-Wolf Parade grindcore band from the '90s. But yeah, no, there's a lot of really good stuff on that comp. That's really cool that you picked it
Submission
up.
Hold, again,
Yes.
one of your faves.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know, man. And then there's even just some stuff where I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna dial up something I don't know here.
Yeah.
There's from Halifax. There was a female-fronted punk band called the Chits.
Yes, actually, it's funny. Their bass player was a longtime coworker of mine, and I went to school with their singer. They're one of those bands that's just kind of like, they were like the band in Halifax in the '90s as far as that kind of like reached out to a point. Like, Yeah, Ian Hart, who played bass for them, also played in Equation of State,
I was
who
going
you
to
might have
say,
heard. Yeah.
the last, first band I was going to
Yeah,
mention.
and Derek Hiltz, their drummer, has played in a lot of different really cool projects as well. And Kara actually is she's a genealogist now. So if you ever want to like research your family tree and want
Get
to go
out
to
a
the genealogy,
swab
she
and
works at like the genealogy museum at Pier 21 in
neat.
Halifax. Yeah, like no, the Chits were really they were a really cool Halifax band of a certain time. Like. And like I said, their bass player was a coworker of mine at my current job for a while.
Wow.
Just because, it's Halifax, and that's just, it's only such, that big of a city.
Well, it's big enough to have, them and Equation of State on this song, too.
Oh, Equation of State are on there, too?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And that was like the last one I was going to mention, but then it was like, I'm like, wow, Phil Clark actually has his own Discogs page, and I'm like, okay, along with, other folks as well, right? So, I mean, for me, this is just something where I can literally go through here and just find out, just based off one or two songs, either something, we've discussed that maybe you've mentioned or, something I was, just adding to the very limited number of tracks released, in some cases by some of these bands that may have only been around for, 2 or 3 years or whatever. So, yeah, man. So that's my number one.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my number one is actually just a pair of songs that were released to promote a tour that's happening this summer. Which it's the bands that are touring together. It's Fucked Up and The Hallucination, formerly known as Tribe Called Red.
Okay.
Who they're doing a big they're doing a big tour across most of Canada. They're not coming to the Maritimes, unfortunately, I don't think. But what they're doing, it's these two very disparate artists who are friends. Fucked Up are kind of like, I mean, it's like they grew out of the hardcore scene, but they've become their own beast in a lot of ways.
That's a good way of describing it with them. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And like they just released their first record with like all of the band participating in like 9 years earlier this year. It's an album called One Day, where they each kind of like some of the members live in different countries now and stuff. So they just kind of each took different recordings and like kind of spent a day working on them and sent them to the next person and just sent them around like that. And that's how they did the most recent album. And to promote this tour with Hallucination, who are like, a mix of like electronic music and powwow music. They recorded a couple songs together that meant a lot to the members of the different bands. The first of them was a song called Electroshock, that is a cover of a Mexican band called Ritmo Peligroso, who were apparently the first Mexican punk band to really put out any widely released records.
Punk band.
Yeah,
right
the
on.
single for this song, Electroshock, was one of Damien, the singer from Fucked Up's, like kind of his like White Whale records. And he'd finally gotten it recently, and the Hallucination guys were also into it. So the two bands collaborated on this kind of cool, like fun, dancey, like electro punk.
Awesome.
Like cover of this song, Electroshock.
I can dig I can dig electro punk. And that's the thing.
And yeah, it's really cool because it's just like, the two band, like both bands really kind of like take a lot of different things and synthesize them into something new in their own ways. And yeah, just to have this like fun, kind of like bouncy, like, yeah, just like proto-punk song with like, like the Hallucination folks bring their own kind of like electronic elements into it too. And there's like little breakdowns that are probably a little dancier than the original version and stuff, but it's cool.
Making it their own. Yeah, that's awesome.
Exactly. And they followed that up just like a week or two ago with another cover, which was this time around was John Wayne Was a Nazi by MDC, which I got pretty excited about because that's one of those. I feel like MDC, like AKA Millions of Dead Cops, are one of those like they're one of those like when you're like a young punker of a certain age, like you buy one of their records just out of shock value, if nothing else. And like some of them are good. They did have some good songs, and like John Wayne Was a Nazi is kind of that was their one of their biggest songs. And yeah, it's like almost like the two bands together make it almost like industrial sounding at times, and like there's a intentionally kind of cheesy bass drop with the womp 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 type things in the middle of it. But yeah, it's pretty great. And like the tour that these two bands are doing together seems really cool. They've got like a dancer who mixes like indigenous dance styles and like modern hip hop styles performing as well, and they have like wrestling matches happening at the beginning of each show as well. And depending on where they're going, there's like, I don't know if you know this, but there's a lot of, I feel like there's a lot of overlap between like punk rock and wrestling these days, especially.
I went to an indie wrestling promotion earlier this spring, thrash wrestling, that's kind of in the Okanagan in BC here. And I have to tell you, it was one of the most punk spectacles that I've been around in some time. I'm like, I can totally see that Venn diagram that you're talking about. Yeah.
And like a lot of the matches, it's like friends of theirs who are also wrestlers who are also kind of punk rock adjacent. Like most of the Western shows had this guy Daniel Makabe, who is a wrestler from Vancouver that I've seen him a couple of times. He's really cool. He's more of like a technical wrestler, but like he comes to the ring wearing a jean jacket with like the Descendants logo, but it says Makabe instead of Descendants.
Fantastic.
Like the Milo Goes to College kind of thing. And he used Teenage Kicks by the Undertones as his entrance music. Yeah, in Ontario they have Jody Threat wrestling in the matches, who like she like skateboards to the ring and stuff, and
awesome.
Yeah, like it's really cool.
Put some effort into
it's like
it.
And like the members of both bands are also like Damien from Fucked Up actually produced
he looks
a really
like a
great
wrestler. I mean, he looks like he could be a wrestler. Right?
He produced a really cool documentary series for Vice, just called The Wrestlers, where he like went everywhere from like Mexico to northern Manitoba to like different parts of Japan, and just like interviewed people instead of like different levels of the business, shall we say.
That almost makes it
so it's just cool that they were able to tie all this stuff together and then like to promote it. Like it's something I've noticed like a few different artists doing more recently, where it's like if bands are touring together, sometimes they might just like put out a song on the internet that's like two bands like collaborating that are going to be on tour together, which I think is really cool. And having like Fucked Up and Hallucination, who are like artists that you wouldn't think really go together, but they definitely do in a lot of ways. Like
that's awesome, man.
Like having them just like produce a couple of pretty cool like fun covers that like are meaningful to the bands. So that was my first pick.
No, man, that's awesome. That sounds compelling, actually. That's again, I like the two sort of you think of things as being quite far apart artistically, and then people just willfully embracing it and jumping into the middle. That's awesome. So for me, my next one is another comp. I just got this, All the President's Men. Yeah, right. And this is on Old Glory Records. So this is like from '94. We got here some. I just listened to this for the first time, actually, because I just got this a few days ago. It's not even up on my Instagram yet.
Ooh.
But it was just like when I ordered it off Discogs, it was like Ass Factor 4.
Oh yeah.
Maximilian Colby. Policy 3. Acme, Shotmaker. And Hoes Got Cable. Like
I love Acme so much. All those bands are great.
All those bands are great, and there's 6 or there's 5 or 6 others. I mean, it's and I was just like looking up, like I was trying to remember, like I remember this, being part of 2% distro offerings, I guess.
I definitely remember it being part of that
Speaking
distro back in the day. Yeah.
speaking of Phil,
hmm
but it was like I just kind of looked it up, and I'm like, oh yeah, they actually, they put out, Old Glory Records. They put out like some of the first Avail records. I
Yeah.
mean, it makes me kind of, and a couple of these, like it looks, I think Axe Factor 4 were from like,
hmm
from
They were from like,
Virginia,
yeah, I
or
think they're,
or
yeah, somewhere in
or,
this, they were like the South, like maybe the
or
Carolinas or something.
South
Yeah.
Carolina, yeah. So
Yeah.
just between that and like a few of these other bands that I just was kind of, like, oh, where were they from? It's, I think, just based on it's kind of a regional thing where,
hmm
so Southern, United States with, maybe others who kind of passed through there back at the time or whatever. But
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Again, I just I just threw this on, and it's a record that's 30 years old or something at this point. Doesn't skip. It just plays nicely on my
That's great.
very mediocre turntable. And I don't know, man. Like the Hose Got Cable song, it's not even titled. It's just untitled. It's got a blank spot for it. And honestly, again, it's kind of like any of these artists, put out so little, in terms of
Yeah.
recorded output. Like I think like Maximilian Kolbe, they basically broke up the year this came out.
hmm
They don't even have like a 12-inch of their own. They have like a split with Shotmaker. They have I think a split with another artist. So
Yeah.
I just, in terms of my, I don't know, like middle-aged curatorship or whatever,
Mm.
I'm like, okay, I got it. In the one of the 6 or 7 things that this awesome, band even put out,
hmm
before they decided to go to community college or whatever.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really, nothing
That's
to
cool.
say about it. Just in terms of, it's like I'll recognize 2 or 3, or 4 artists on the thing, and I'll be like,
hmm
okay, that's enough. The rest of it's got to be awesome. And
Yeah.
this definitely is the case. So
Yeah. Acme that's on there. They're another one of those bands. I think they maybe released 9 songs in their
I've heard,
lifetime, but they were so good. They're like, yeah, I don't know. I need to find a reason to like include them in a list somewhere sometime.
well, and
Yeah.
they're one of those bands that like this '90s punk and hardcore thing that I follow on Facebook. Every time they come up, I'm like, all the people come on. They're like, they were so good, and I'm like, okay, good. I'm glad
Yeah.
I can now contextualize that with what they sound like. So
Yeah. If you ever get a chance to pick up it's called To Reduce the Choir to One Soloist is the 12-inch that they put out that's got all, however many songs they put out. But it's just like they were this German hardcore band that popped up out of nowhere, just blatantly ripped off Slayer, like here, left and right, but like in the
fantastic.
best kind of dumbed down ways. And yeah, they were fun. But anyways, yeah, no, that's an
dope.
awesome pick. I'm excited about that.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. So my next pick is a newer band, who they've showed up in my honorable mentions for various things like a couple of times now, and it's like I gotta put them on here just because it's one of those like, they're one of those bands that if I just want 10 minutes of just like I'll throw them on, and that's Baltimore's End It, and their Unpleasant Living EP. And they're a band that I realized in looking up just more information about them, because I mean, just like interviews and that sort of thing, that I had years ago listened to a podcast that their singer had been doing called Up the Blunks. Where it was him and another co-host were like, just having like humorous interviews with fellow like black punks, for lack of a better show description.
Okay.
And yeah, and this guy Akhil Godsey, he maybe mentioned being in a band once or twice, but last year I heard this EP by this band End It, and it just like kicked my ass, for lack of a better term. They're just like really great, like no bullshit fast hardcore mixed with like just straight up thrash metal at times. Like, their singer almost, there's a couple times where he does the like almost like yeah type metal vocals, and can pull it off. Like, he is a talented vocalist, but mostly just kind of does like the hardcore shouts. And yeah, all the songs, like, the intro track BCHC, welcomes you to the Baltimore City Hate Crew. Yeah, there are some firearms in their music videos and that sort of thing, but they're coming from a good place. They're just kind of like,
as long as maybe it's
it's
in
they're
Baltimore,
it's Baltimore. Like, one of the two music videos that the band has made is an homage to The Wire, with their singer.
Fantastic! I like them already just on that basis.
Yeah, I think it might have just been an excuse so that their singer could walk around and like lip sync one of their songs wearing a trench coat and waving a shotgun. I don't know, but that's for their song "New Age Slavery," which has my favorite like non-verbal ad lib at the end of it. That's just like in a recent hardcore song where like that just says more than any words. Where it's just like after the last line of the song, the singer just kind of goes like, ugh, in a way where it just feels like his entire soul and just like guts are coming up out of him to just punctuate the end of the track, and it's great. And it's funny, they've kind of become like the old guy whisperers in a lot of ways, because like a lot of like the sort of more like 80s vintage punk rock dudes that I know, like if I hear them talk about a new band, they're like, yeah, these End It guys, they're pretty good, huh? And yeah, like they've been getting featured more and more. Like, they've been doing more and more touring this summer and getting featured in like different festivals and stuff. And like with Trapped Under Ice from Baltimore, the Turnstile folks' old band, with them being back together, like End It have been the opening act on some of their stuff, and that's been a big deal for them.
I was going to say Turnstiles from Baltimore, and they're just
it's like Baltimore is just
popular now. So
yeah, it's apparently Baltimore's, it's got a bit of a scene there, and like like Trapped Under Ice were pretty popular, like just in like the hardcore scene before Turnstile were a thing, and then Turnstile are now Turnstile.
Yep.
And like, their singer had his other band, Angel Dust, who are also cool too. I've mentioned them on the show.
Yep.
So yeah, like Baltimore's a whole thing. And End It are kind of one of the up and coming bands out of there. And yeah, Unpleasant Living, their EP from 2022. It's just like, it's a 7-inch, it's 8 songs. It's like, yeah, it's fast, it's heavy, it's funny, it's angry, it's really pissed off. It's pretty great.
What's not to like? Yeah,
exactly. What's not to like? And it's really punk rock.
Well, fantastic.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay. Well, I guess if we're talking, sort of switching, from sort of a regional sort of discussion, I'll just, speak to these kind of 2 releases, both of them Discord, both of them come from kind of different decades. So,
nice.
This is Jawbox, who kind of went on to have some, mainstream success. This is one of the records from 1992. So I think this is their last LP, Novelty. And then it was originally released on CD, and then they put it out remastered on vinyl, a few years back. And I don't know quite if they're still, kind of putting out music or doing any kind of revival or whatnot. But this was just like something where I just saw it and I just kind of listened to a few fragments of it, and I'm like, yeah, this will be sick. And, sure enough, I threw it on the record player machine, and I just kind of got to sit back and go, yeah, man, 90s,
nice.
Contemporaneous of Fugazi, and whatnot on Discord, and it just it checked a lot of the boxes for me. It was one of those things where I was like, really? I mean, they so much have their own sound.
Mm-hmm.
Now Soulside, I guess they've been putting stuff out. They had like a precursor band. I mean, since the '80s. I mean, these were just part of the Discord hardcore scene. And I gather again just from their kind of chronology that they kind of broke up for like 10 or 20 years, got back together for a one-off, broke up for a few more years after that, and then finally, just as people get older, have more time or whatever, they put out another record, and this came out in 2022. So we're talking 30 years of separation between the release of these two albums. But I mean, they're both sick, in their own respective ways. There's still, people who are giving it. And actually, those are just kind of one of the last, significant record orders that I did before, changed my address. So I've kind of,
Yeah,
I've stopped buying.
You might have to ship it.
Yeah, right. So I stopped. I stopped buying new stuff. But one of the things that I am looking forward to is I ordered like 6 or 7 or 8 albums from Discord directly, including stuff that I haven't even necessarily listened to ever. But it's just, this is where the label and the regional scene, DC obviously just so huge, in terms of just all of that music, where I'm just like, yes, I will take a chance, on Koriki, which is like one of Joel Lally's bands or something, post Fugazi or whatever. Like, do tell, I'll go on and check some of this stuff out. So I'm waiting to get that. Hopefully that arrives here, before I scram in about 3 weeks. But so yeah, Discord Records, close to Virginia, I suppose. So if we're looking for sort of another kind of tie to a lot of the music that's on this President's Men Comp. Yeah, man, that's kind of speaking of regional scenes and speaking of things that are cool from kind of specific areas, right? So
yeah. Just I guess on the topic of regions and how bands, I feel like certain kind of bands can only certain kinds of bands can only come from certain kinds of places. And the last of like the 3 we'll probably talk about on the show here is a band that I can only imagine. It's like when I found out where they were from, it seemed to make perfect sense for me. It's Oklahoma City's Chat Pile.
Okay.
Who, last year they released, I guess they've been around probably since like, the mid 2000 teens. They put out a few EPs. I guess they did the soundtrack to like an indie movie that a friend of theirs did or something. But last year they released their first full length, this album, God's Country. And there's like, I feel like I listen to a lot of bands that are heavy, but within very established tropes of like sort of a metal or a punk, where it's like, we're using these sorts of chords at this sort of volume, and it's like that or something like that. That like that's the way most people get to heavy, and the way the Chat Pile get to heavy is just so like, just anguished and unsettling, but just still fucking heavy. That just
anguish is a key component there.
Yeah. Like I feel like you can only be like there. I guess to try and describe their music, it's kind of a mix of like almost like the Melvins and Jesus Lizard. And something like,
like something
they have their drummer uses like triggered synth pad, like uses synth pads, but like plays them like drums, but just so that they can adjust the tones. So it has like real Godflesh vibes as well. And like,
I don't think that's the first time that band has ever been mentioned on the show. I'm pretty sure.
But like, like it's just like, like almost industrial sounding. And their singer, like, sometimes he uses like, he'll go to like sort of like a screaming kind of vocal style, but most of it's almost just like this half crying, half spoken, but then like, just dropping into some like deep guttural screams. Well, like, yeah, over top of like synth drums and like pretty heavy distorted bass and like, or not even distorted, but just like very processed sounding bass. And like guitars that like sometimes they're like quiet and melodic and almost jangly sounding, but juxtaposed with everything else, just like, you know, it's like something's just like being stabbed in the back of your spine, like kind of sound. Yeah, and they're just like, it's really cool to hear a band to just get to being really heavy in kind of their own way. And yeah, this album God's Country is like, I first heard of it just because it popped up on a lot of year-end lists at the end of 2022. People just being like, "Who the fuck is this band? Like, where did they come from? They're great." And yeah, like, it's not a like, it's a nice day, I'm gonna put on some tunes kind of listen, but you know, it's
I'm contemplating my own dissolution into the universe
exactly,
with each passing second.
yeah, something needs holes
Existential
put in
malaise.
it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, look at that kind of music. But just like, yeah, in their own way. But they still seem to have like a really like, you know, kind of cool like DIY ethos and stuff too. Like, you know, like it's just
What's the label for that?
Yeah.
Not trying to put you on the spot, but I mean, you know, it's like is it like self-released kind of Bandcamp level?
Just
stuff?
a second here.
Sure.
It is on, I think it's their own label, The Flenser.
Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, like their stuff.
DIY. You know, they are literally putting it out themselves. Okay.
Yeah. But like they're well known enough that like the record you should be able to find it in like stores with like a decent indie selection. But yeah, like Chat Pile, they're just, like I said, they're like just a cool heavy band that, you know, they fit the right mood.
Fantastic. No, man, I'll be I'm looking forward to seeing the notes with the clickable YouTube link to add to the episode playlist. And again, like every time we do one of these episodes, I get to go to my Discogs cart off of some of the things that, you know, you kind of mentioned, where I'm like, okay. So like I got a bunch of stuff by the Nils just sitting there, you know, waiting, and some of the other stuff from, you know, the previous episodes and whatever. It's like once I have an address again, I'll you know, it's that's one of the things. It's like I'm just having a job again, you know. It's going to be like I won't just be going through this so-called credit card money that doesn't really seem like it exists, but it totally does, you know. So I'll be like reining that in. The records will, because the records will be paid for. So like even like the whole collection, you know, just kind of ends up in trust somewhere, or, you know, just kind of, you know, just broken up for the purpose of, you know, I'll keep a few things. I'll keep, you know, like those hardcore comps. I mean, you know, those would not be bought for a bunch of money by a vendor, but to me, you know, for the enjoyment I get out of them. So this is where I kind of say, for me, like 90s hardcore is like kind of the pinnacle of a certain kind of thing, because, you know, it's like, if I was to, you know, liquidate that whole, you know, 700 or 800 vinyl thing, it's like, yes, the 8, you know, record, you know, reissue of friggin' Wilco Hotel Yankee Foxtrot, the 11 LP, like, yes, that can go.
Yeah.
But, you know, the thing with Shotmaker, Policy of 3 on it, it's like, I'd have to go to such trouble to get my hands on that again.
Oh, yeah.
Or just, you know, as something else, you know, like Leatherface, Minx, or not Minx, Fill Your Boots. This is
like you're not gonna, that's not something that You're not going to get that at the Lawtons, like.
Right. I'm like, I just like this. You know, they're from Sunderland, UK,
Yeah.
and somebody sent this to me from Japan, to you know, to Kamloops, and again, it's like I've had the odd digital file on this forever. Somebody, you know, it's like honestly, what I paid for it on Discogs compared to if this was just at a shop, you know, at a shop, this would just be like a $25 item or something. And it's like, for me, you know, this is like one of my favorite bands ever. Their second record, you know, whatever, hard to find stuff. So
Exactly.
I'll, you know, I plan by the next time we record this to be able to provide some more adventures in, you know, curating and or deconstructing this record collection of mine. So that's
Nice.
it's exciting times, I suppose.
If you're ever looking for just like a kick of 90s hardcore nostalgia on Instagram, there's an account called Canadian Wasteland.
I follow them because you follow them.
Yeah, they have some good stuff on there, and they actually have a blog spot as well.
Oh, do they?
Where they post like you can like stuff that they get to find, you know, for archival purposes, of course. Stuff that, you know, maybe is not as easy to find. Like they'll have like digital copies available.
Well,
like old school, you know, like it's 2009 again. Like,
well, it's as you mentioned, right? A lot of this stuff was recorded, you know, very, you know, like 25 years ago or whatever.
Exactly.
And you know, in such haphazard circumstances that, you know, any effort to preserve it is, you know, legit. If it's being done with transparency and this, like, you know, somebody like they're an architect now or they're a school teacher now, or you know, like they work for Fisheries Canada or whatever. Like, you know, like I would not be offended personally. I don't think if somebody were to pluck some artistic thing from, you know, that period of time and just go, hey, you know, this existed and it was cool at the time, and let's just try and make it slightly more reachable to people. So I think that's legit, honestly.
Yeah. On that just to quickly touch on that topic, I do want to plug another podcast called The First 7-Inch Club. And that's actually something they also do. Is the mission statement of the podcast is just they find bands that only put out one or, you know, a couple of records.
Yeah.
And they'll pick a 7-inch and just kind of like, you know, talk smack about it for an hour, for lack of a better term. You know, they'll listen to it, you know, give their honest appraisals just as folks who lived through that era of hardcore the first time around, and, you know, have, you know, their own knowledge of things like graphic design and like music on like varying levels. And but they always like, they have a YouTube channel where they always put the records up, and they'll have scans of all the artwork and everything, because they always talk about they'll go through like, you know, they'll go through the liner notes and critique the fonts, like that level of it. And it's impressive. I always find it a very entertaining listen. And but yeah, the First 7-Inch Club, if you ever get a chance to check that out.
Well, I hope you'll include that in the notes.
I will.
As the thing, because again, we kind of go. It sounds like for us, we kind of go macro, we kind of go global with sort of a higher level overview of a few things. What you're describing is sort of the opposite of that, where you know, you zoom in on it, you go micro, you go like just insanely, you know, taking it apart at a very specific level. That sounds dope, man. You go into any concerts or shows? Yeah, I think you put something up on your social media that you got tickets for or something.
Yeah, well, this is like an in the future kind of show, but
okay, how far in the future?
Well, it's like the first week of October. MS Paint, who I've talked about on the show a couple of times, are they're playing in Montreal with a couple other bands that I like, Military Gun and Scowl. Actually, Military Gun were one of my runners-up for this list. Right. And they're another band that will like collaborate with folks that they tour with. But anyways, it's it's a big tour that all three bands are doing, but Montreal is the last show that MS Paint are doing on the tour, and
Fantastic.
it was just one of those things that like sometimes you need something to look forward to, you know?
Absolutely.
And it was like an easy ticket and far enough away that like I don't do a whole lot I don't do a whole lot of traveling these days. Like it's been a couple years since I planned any like a trip outside Nova Scotia really even.
Okay. That's
And I figured like what the hell? Might as well go see this band that I like.
may as
When they're
well
playing like
have a unique
not that
special
far
time.
away. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, so there's that. There's a couple other, Napalm Raid, who are a Halifax band that have kind of all moved to different, like I think a couple of guys. One guy lives here, one guy lives in Montreal, and one guy lives in Vancouver. They're all coming back to Nova Scotia for a bit in a couple of weeks, and I will probably try and go to that show because those are dudes that like, yeah, it's their old band, or one of them used to play in a band called the Plague Dogs that were like a big part of my early aughts Halifax scene experience, and
Right
the rest of them are all just dudes that have been were part of things here forever and then kind of moved on to pursue their own endeavors. But yeah, they had this band Napalm Raid that fairly popular in like the crust punk scene, I guess. They got a couple LPs out. They've done a fair amount of touring. They haven't really done a whole lot in the past couple of years, but I think this year they're getting back on the go again, and Halifax is going to be one of the places they play. So I'll probably go to that show too.
Right on. Well, one thing I've looked at is there's Area 506 in St. John, which is kind of this, it started out just as a music festival. It's kind of taken on a cultural kind of thing. And they're having their annual weekend event in August, which is going to be
nice
when I'm there. And one of the things on the lineup that actually made me interested to go, you remember the Monoxides?
Yeah, oh yes.
The Monoxides still exist.
Oh yeah. They get back together every once in a while. They have one of those guys has another band called Which is Which.
Okay.
That are like his that's his like current project, but the Monoxides still get back together every once in a while. I haven't seen them. I haven't seen them since it's been a couple of decades, let's put it that way. But yeah,
I was impressed. It's like it's like so in between I don't know Matt Mays or whoever some kind of like whatever, but it was just like they're going eclectic to the point, and they're including the 90s punk people, right, that are sort of nearby. So that's
well, and the Monoxides did okay for themselves back in the day. They apparently I'm pretty sure I heard a story of them opening for ZZ Top on tour during their like brief major label dalliance.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, good for them, really. Anybody who can, be in proximity of somebody at that level within their thing is really, they're doing pretty well, I'd say. Honestly, that's
exactly.
Right on, man.
All right.
So, anything else for the thing here? Or?
Well, I had a couple others that I was gonna save more from the notes, but I'll just quickly run through. Which was just sort of what they are. Which is Gel, who are a newer punk band out of New Jersey. Their motto is "Hardcore for the Freaks," and they make a point of trying to play, create more inclusive environments for folks at like kind of shows where you might be more likely to get punched in the face, I guess you could say. And not like they're going to stop that from happening, but or stop sort of the moshing from shows happening, but just sort of trying to get everybody involved. And yeah, they put out a new album last year called Only Constant on Convulse Records, which is a label out of Colorado that's been putting a lot of they put out the MS Paint album and a few other things. And yeah, they're just kind of like fun drive-in like punk. Their album I think is like 17 minutes long, like one of those kind of things. And then finally, the last thing was another collaboration, which is a hip hop record. It's Danny Brown and JPEG Mafia's album "Scaring the Hose."
I've heard of Danny Brown. He's got like
Yes.
yeah. And you
He
mentioned
is-
JPEG Mafia before, right?
Yes, exactly. And they
yeah.
both kind of play off each other in very like weird, abrasive, glitchy ways. And you know, I'm not gonna spend too much time because I don't want to like, you know, go over time here. But yeah, it's JPEG Mafia does all the production, and Danny Brown plays off it really well. He doesn't just do his high-pitched, weird drug voice, for lack of a better term. Because I don't know what it is about Detroit rappers, but him and Eminem both have there's certain songs where the voice gets high, that have certain content. And
the upper register.
The upper register just that, yeah. But no, it's definitely worth checking out if you're into like alternative hip hop type stuff. And anyways, yeah. That's it for me.
Fantastic. Well, you sold me right there. So, yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, everybody, for checking in. It's always a pleasure. We'll be doing, at least one more of these before I kind of make my escape to New Brunswick. So it won't be the west and the east anymore. It'll just be strictly east. Coming up here in the summer episodes. So things to look forward to, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, always a good time. Appreciate everybody who's listening, and take care, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks.